All right, now I have some assets set up, but I need to start building them of my creature to mimic the walk cycle that I used. So there's a few ways I could do this. I could take my original creature there and cut out parts of it, like its leg here. Command J, duplicate that onto its own layer. And then I could label that front right leg, right? And I can do that with each part and kind of turn it into a doll. Go back to my original, duplicate it, left or front left leg. This is a perfectly fine way to work. It gives you ultimate control. And look that I am getting a certain amount of overlap, just like if it was a grommet doll. You not only want to get the leg, you want to get where the grommet turns on the torso. So this is the back. I'll say rear. Right leg. And then, of course, the last one. Duplicate it. Rear left leg. Okay, so that is what's called building assets. Why does that matter? Well, because now I have all four of those legs that I can individually mimic. My tail isn't long enough that it really matters, but notice that the head is also its own asset. So just to keep it really simple, I'm just going to cut a big chunk of the head, just like that. And because it's a PNG, it's all loose. And that will be the head as its own asset. Okay, but then in smaller details, you have to think ahead to this doll. I don't want my creature's eye to always be open. I don't want its mouth to always be open. So I need to clean that up. So I'm going to take the lower jaw. Duplicate that. And that will be an asset. And I'm going to take the eye and duplicate that. And that will be an asset. These are all things now that I can animate. So how do I animate it? Well, I take that lower jaw layer, and if I turn off my background, this is all my assets combined so far. So I guess if I'm being thorough now, I need the body as an asset, with a little bit of overlap. Right, that torso. Oh, and I missed something. You see that? And that's going to be a problem. So I want to add to that selection. It's better to have too much than too little. You can always erase. So that's my body asset. And then if I put all those pieces together, I should be able to turn off this layer, which I've done, and remove pieces. And see how this doll will operate. Okay, so now how do I animate? These are the parts of the doll I have. I'm going to open a new file, same size, 10 by 10, 100, but I'm going to call this Carl Fry Stage, Character Stage Assets. Not even assets, stage frames. Assignment 5. It just has a generic white background. Now I'm going to make my first frame, basically this. What's my equivalent of this? Building up my assets. And I don't need any of these timeline. Don't think you need to be working with the timeline. I'm trying to match this image. Actually, where is... Oh, okay, yep, so it's right there. So that's my first frame. So trying to match that, let's bring it down, and first I'm going to make a duplicate, always duplicates, of my front right leg. The reason I labeled all of them is when I make a duplicate, it will give me that same title for the layer, but it will make it a copy. Then if I duplicate it again, it will be copy 2. So that's very helpful. So my first copy, I need to transform this, right? But I need to break it right there, which I could try to do with warp. And that kind of works. You see? So the difference between this and that, and that. So let's just try to do it with warp first. Now, the front left leg, I need to make it match. So I first duplicate it, so I'm working on a copy. I'll move it forward a little bit. Maybe that's all it needs for this first position. But I noticed that it needs to be in front of this leg. So yes, front legs need to be in front of the, or the left legs in this case need to be in front of the right legs. Okay, next. So I'll move all of those up. I'm setting it up. Next, move this down underneath. How do I make this leg match? Make a duplicate of it. Let's try warp again. See how that goes. I'm trying to put the joint in the right place. Looks pretty good. And then for the last leg, it's almost right on. But for the sake of the cycle, make a duplicate, warp it a little bit. Okay, so what I'm doing is warping it section by section to get that first pose. Now, where does the body need to be? Let's make a duplicate of the body, and then let's move it up. And yes, that body looks pretty good, but notice right there, I need to cut it. And you can use your eraser, but GIF animations are low res, so you don't need to be quite so precise about how you transition. So I've got that now. I've got that leg position. And then it looks like there, that's a little weird. So what does that teach me? It teaches me that my front right leg needs to not have a hard edge there, because it's going to have to pivot back and forth. So I'm going to erase it a little bit away, softly, so that it blends. You see? Then I can use that. And then my body, I'm going to cut that a little bit, or blend, that's too soft. Blend away from it slightly. If I'm going for real believability, I would do this on all the limbs where they transition. So all these copies, I would blend it with the eraser there a little bit, and that will help all of my future copies. See how that hard edge is there? I'm just going to soften that so it will move more easily. And then the other front leg. Just slowly blend, not too far, I still need a lot of overlap, but that copy. Oops. So knowing which layer you're working on is very important. You only ever want to change layers that have copy in their name. So you can always go back to the original if you need to. Okay. Now I need a head, so I'm going to make a copy of the head, duplicate it, move it up above the body. I can soften its transition, just in anticipation of needing to later on. And now, this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. The lower jaw, make a copy of that, move it up above the head. How do I close the mouth? So I want to start this animation with the mouth closed. I'm going to push it up like that, push it in, and then selectively erase away. But now I need to change my head copy as well, because this is a closed mouth head copy. Maybe a little bit cleaner there. Right? And now I got to take away the tongue that's coming out and find that seam. All right, so now I've got a closed mouth, which is different than the open mouth. Now the eye. Let's say I want to make a duplicate of the eye asset, move it up. And this is all just to make one frame of character animation. I'll go ahead and move the eye. And I need to make this eye blink. So how can I do that? Well, first, let's just use simple transforming. And I'll just transform it that way. And you can kind of see that blinking. And I can soften around the edges if I need to, but it's never going to be that visible. All right. So that's my first frame. I can turn off my guide. I can turn off the non-copy images, right? And then that should be everything that I designed. Shouldn't have anything that's not a copy turned on. Only copies are turned on. And if you're really meticulous, you can even color code each new thing. It is a good idea to probably color code your original asset for each thing, so you can always go back to it should you need to. So all of my legs and all my original bodies, I'm going to color code them all green. Now this is a lot of prep work, but it's going to yield a lot of benefits later. Okay, so now I have my first frame. Save my character assets as a PSD file. And now what I do is a little weird. I am going to select all those layers that are turned on, and then I can move all those layers onto my stage and flatten them into one frame, but this is the easier way to do it. It's just a little scarier. You save it first while you have all the separate layers, and then you go to your top visible layer and you say Layer Merge Visible, or better yet, hold down Option and say Merge Visible, and then it puts it all on one layer together, and then that's the layer that you move over to your stage. So you're going to have two Photoshop files always open for your animation, where you build your assets and your puppet parts, and then you can make it a little bit smaller, but your final stage. So I click this, I take that layer I just made, I drag and drop it into here, but notice how it will position wrong. So instead of dragging and dropping, I take that whole layer, I hit Command A to select all, I copy, Command C, and then I drop in Command V. And there it is, on a white background, my first walk cycle frame. All right, so now what I would do is I would seek to create all of these other frames the same way, building up those different layers. And then I have a walk cycle.